And we have returned. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. This is Beth Ann. And like I promised you earlier in the show, we're going to have Harriet Hageman on. She's with the NCLA, and that's the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and they are the attorneys that are fighting for RCAF USA, as well as a couple other of independent ranchers that are suing the USDA over the RFID. Harriet, I just get a big kick out of all these initials. How are you doing today, Harriet?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I was telling my listeners that we were going to talk, and I was rattling off all those initials, and it just cracked me up because I actually got them out, and I was kind of surprised at myself. Yesterday I had a terrible time with my tongue. I couldn't pronounce
you
just about anything.
You did a great job. That was kind of fun.
Thank you very much. Well, I told them we were going to give an update, and I told them we had good news, but not to back off just yet. So I'm going to let you explain to them what our good news is and what exactly is happening right now with this.
Well, as your listeners may know, I've been on this radio program a couple of times now, and what we've talked about is the RFID mandate coming out of the USDA. And that was a mandate that was issued a fact sheet, but pursuant to a fact sheet last April. USDA, APHIS issued a fact sheet, a 2-page fact sheet, basically stating that the vast majority of all of our livestock producers had to start using RFID no later than January 1, 2023. We sued over that because that violated the Administrative Procedures Act, and it violated the 2013 regulation and a variety of other things. And in October, the USDA actually withdrew that fact sheet and said that they were not going to pursue the RFID mandate at this time, and that in the event that they go forward with an RFID mandate, they will go through the proper APA, Administrative Procedure Act process for doing so. So we were pretty excited about that. We were happy that they withdrew that mandate because it clearly was illegal, and they did withdraw it. But I wasn't ready to give up my lawsuit yet because I said, you still violated the Administrative Procedures Act, and probably more importantly, they violated the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And that was that they had put together an advisory committee that was made up of only people who supported the RFID technology and ear tags. The chair of that committee is a gentleman who is one of the top dogs in one of the largest ear tag manufacturing companies in the United States. So you can understand the personal and professional interest that he would have in a federal regulation that required all of our livestock producers to use RFID ear tags. So anyway, the feds said, well, we think we've resolved everything, so they filed a motion to dismiss our lawsuit in January of this year. On January 15th, they filed a motion to dismiss, and I responded to that and said, well, it's fine and dandy. We're pretty happy that they withdrew the ear tag requirement, but we do believe that we ought to be able to go forward with this case and show that they also violated the Federal Advisory Committee Act, in part because we don't want them using all of the materials and data and statistics and white papers and all of the things that they developed by that advisory committee to just do this again. We're not gaining anything if they just come back in 6 months from now and do the same doggone thing. Well, yeah. I also
and they would.
And they would. And I also wanted them to have to go on record of saying, we are going to comply with the APA. We have withdrawn that fact sheet. We have withdrawn that policy. I didn't want just a one-line stipulation dismissing the case. I wanted those agencies on the record saying we're absolutely not going forward with this unless and until we comply with the law. And I got that. I was pretty proud of that. But I also wanted a court order saying they're not going forward with this unless they comply with the law. And in fact, we got that in February. On February 13th, Judge Nancy Friedenthal, our judge here in Wyoming, issued an order dismissing our case, but being very, very, very strong in making statements such as, what is known is that the 2019 fact sheet is not recognized as agency policy, and the Department of Ag has unambiguously stated that the requirements of the 2019 fact sheet will not be implemented, and she bolded that. And I got several statements like that from her order. So I was very, very pleased with her order because it is what I wanted. While it wasn't exactly an injunction, an affirmative injunction, it was definitely a statement that is going to prevent them from being able to come right back in and try to impose RFID.
Well, I'm glad that you stuck with it and got that because we know that they'll come back. It hasn't been, I know it's been a while, but it doesn't seem that long ago in my mind when it was the NAIS. You know, they just keep coming at these farmers and ranchers. Can you explain to my listeners that don't know anything about farming and ranching why farmers are against this RFID being mandated?
Well, sure, there's a variety of reasons, but one of them is that the agencies have to comply with the law just like the rest of us. And in 2013, there was a regulation that was adopted related to animal identification and traceability. And according to that regulation, which was adopted pursuant to the law, the agencies will recognize and acknowledge brands, ear tags, back tags, group identification numbers, and tattoos. What that means is that our traditional forms of identification are still considered to be official identification. So it is from the standpoint of a cost measure, because the vast majority of our ranchers continue to use those types of techniques to identify their cattle. According to the USDA in 2013, when they issued that regulation, had they required RFID ear tags at that time, it would have cost between $1.2 and $1.9 billion to our industry just to force all of our livestock producers to go RFID. So one of the issues relates to the fact that it's just so costly. The other one is technology and feasibility. Our people are working out in the middle of nowhere. You're going to have to develop and build and construct the facilities where you would be able to use the RFID, because right now most of our facilities are not going to be usable for an RFID technology. We run our cattle through sale barns, 20, 30, 40, 50 head at a time. How are they going to have the chutes that are just going to literally move those cattle through one at a time to be able to get all of those different ear tags and monitor that and be able to collect that data? It's a feasibility issue. It's a cost issue, and it's also a liberty and a freedom issue. Absolutely. Because one of the things that they have to do for RFID is they have to have what's called a premises identification number.
Exactly.
And a PIN mandate would require every one of our livestock producers to register their properties with the USDA. And this is where the scary part comes in. They've even admitted that this has to do with, quote, verification. And what that means is that they want to have the opportunity to come in and verify or dictate to our livestock producers all kinds of things in terms of their operations. In fact, I'm looking at an article that was written in Beef Magazine in 2018. And what they're suggesting is that the reason they want RFID is they want, quote, tighter controls on production specifications. And those specifications will include verification of production practices, as well as tighter controls as to how cattle are fed and managed, carcass weights, marbling requirements, and portion requirements. So this is so that they can come in and tell our livestock producers, you can't finish out that particular steer. We don't want them finished out at 1,500 pounds. We want them finished out at 1,200 pounds so that they don't have the marbling. This is just another mechanism to get at the beef industry and make it so that our meat isn't as tasty. They want to start controlling the marbling in our beef, and the way that you do that is with RFID technology, and start mandating that people do things, well, producers do things, or they'll cut them off from the market.
And, of course, their excuse or the reasons that they give, at least to the public, is it's about disease control. But we've already done that. I mean, it's like Bill Bullard has told us many times. The U.S. has the best and safest beef in the world. And
Absolutely.
So, that's just another thing. You want to stay with me through the next segment, or do you need to go?
No, I'll sure stay with you.
Okay. Well, let's just sit and visit. We'll visit when you come back. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. This is Beth Ann. I'm visiting with Harriet Hageman, and with the NCLA, and we will be right back. We have returned. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. This is Beth Ann. I asked Harriet to stay with me because, you know, when you talked about the premise, that was the same deal with the NAIS when it was that. And I remember my late boss talking about that. And he got pretty riled up over that because it's always about the land and control, isn't it, Harriet?
Well, it is. It really is. And the whole verification idea, one of the things that this concerns me about is that right now we have full traceability and identification in this country. And I'm going to read to you a statement that was made by the USDA in the 2013 regulation. They specifically stated that, quote, requiring there to be individual identification on each animal that moved through the pre-harvest production chain would not improve the traceability of those animals. In other words, it isn't required. They said that the group lot identification is a justified option in those situations, regardless of the size of the group. So now they come back and say, we want disease traceability. We have to be able to do this instantaneously. They can do that. They can do it with the identification they already have. But as I read to you from the Beef magazine, when they're advocating for RFID, what they can do is they can start adopting other regulations and requirements, that you've got to have wildlife-friendly fences, or that you've got to fence out all of your natural water supply under the Clean Water Act. I mean, they're going to come up with all kinds of things, and then they're going to have inspectors that can come to your property with your premises identification number, and they can say you're either compliant or you're not. And if you're not compliant, you can't access the market. Many of these things are potentially going to put people out of business. So what does that mean? We're going to start reducing our cattle herds because we're not going to have as many people raising cattle because they're simply not going to be able to afford to comply with these requirements. The issue comes down to an undifferentiated commodity, which is what we have right now. With our livestock and the way we produce and sell, it is essentially an undifferentiated commodity, and as a result, government agencies cannot control our producers. We have the safest meat in the world. We already have the traceability capacity. What's interesting is these RFID requirements are not applied to import cattle. So just last week, Brazil, for the first time, has been cleared to access our market again. Brazil has problems with animal disease. They have been locked out of the U.S. market since 2017, and as of last week, USDA has cleared them to start bringing Brazilian cattle back into the United States. So here we've got these issues. We shouldn't be importing those problems, but they don't have to comply with the RFID. It's our domestic herds that do. So that's one of the concerns. But, Beth Ann, I wanted to tell you of the latest development that I discovered last week. And that is that published in the February 2020 version of Nebraska Cattleman is what's referred to as an informational page. And it's the 2019 fact sheet all over again. And in that document, it states RFID ear tags will be required for beef and dairy cattle and bison moving interstate that meet the above requirements. It is almost identical to the 2019 fact sheet with a few changes. Rather than specific dates, hardwired dates like January 1st, 2023, they refer to that as Phase 3. This was paid for by the Nebraska Department of Ag and USDA.
You know, that doesn't surprise me. It saddens me, but it doesn't surprise me. We have to stay vigilant.
Yes, so I'm going to file a motion today and bring this to the judge's attention and say, they're still going forward with this, Judge. They haven't given up.
No, they haven't. They're just trying to go in a back door, and they do that all the time, all the time. Well, you know, I titled today's show, Tracking U.S. Cows, but Not the Coronavirus. You know, we have the Democrats on the stage, and some of them are angry at the president because he's tried to control who's coming back into this nation, and we need to find out if they're infected. And they're calling him racist and everything else about that, you know. But they want to implement things like this against the United States folks, our own citizens, our own ranchers, our own cattle, our own farmers, you know, and just open up the borders to all kinds of disease. So it doesn't make any sense if they're going to give us to the disease side of it, if they're going to let Brazil cattle come in here, Brazilian cattle, beef come in here, and when we know that it doesn't have near the regulations and health regulations that our own cattle do.
The quality
it just doesn't
control.
make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But again, what it has to do is it's incrementalism. It is a manner of, if the average herd is 40 and the person who has 40 head is not able to afford this kind of technology, then that particular person sells their cattle. In the West, if it's not feasible in a 2,000 acre pasture to do something like this, then maybe you don't run as many head in that pasture. It is incrementalism, and it's also a way to do the vertical integration. If the big packers, if Walmart, if those kinds of organizations can get rid of the individual farmer and rancher, then they take over and they control the market, and that's where we are with this. And I'm disappointed that our USDA is not more of a defender of our independent producers. This was a bad idea. It remains a bad idea. It's going to allow states like California to dictate how we raise cattle in Wyoming by saying, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we're not going to allow your cattle to access our market. So it's a very troublesome development and something that we just need to keep fighting back about.
Well, surely the Secretary knows that this is going on. He can't be oblivious to it. He has to know.
Well, that's his job.
Of USDA, I'm sorry. Sorry, say that again.
It's his job to know. I mean, it's somebody's
job. So, he's been kind of a disappointment in some respects in this way. And, I just don't know how else to put it. But, we just have to stay vigilant and stay at him. I'm coming to your state in May. I'm very excited about that. I've been just chattering about it. I'll be there on May 7th. I'm going to be speaking at the Wyoming State Republican Convention on Thursday night, May 7th. Awesome. I was hoping you'd say that.
Yes, I will be there.
We meet at last. And we're planning on staying at least through Friday evening. We have been invited to stay and be a part of that evening as well, or listen. We're going to sit and enjoy. But Thursday night I will be the speaker, and I'm very excited about that, and hope I can give them what they want. They want to talk about Constitution, so that's what we're going to do. And
good for you.
I'm going to talk about some of the things that's going on. Thank you for what you're doing there, and I know that it's a fight that's just non-ending. They keep coming back. If they get rid of the RFID, they'll come back with some other kind of initials that have the same thing.
One of the things that's so troublesome about this is that if they do mandate RFID, that freezes the technology at that point in time. We'll never get any other advancement. So right now I'm learning that there's different ways that we can do things such as DNA testing, and there might be other kinds of identification that we could use in the future. If USDA and these ear tag manufacturing companies are successful at hardwiring in RFID, then the advancements and changes in identification technology will be shot down immediately. So
I hear
the other things that's troubling.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not just a matter of this little chip. There's so much more. Thank you, Harriet, for all you do. Thank you for NCLA that they are staying vigilant on this. I appreciate it so much, and we'll probably have you on again, and we'll for sure see you in May. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio as we all try to bring America home.